Welcome to another episode of SportsVibe. I'm your host, Arnav Sarkar, here with episode 74, the college football playoff preview. We'll get into some NFL later on as well, but I'm really excited to bring it back. I've been a little bit busy with finals and other things going on, but it's a college football playoff, 12 teams instead of the usual 4, so excited to see what we have here, but it's a big week in sports. I'm recording this on Thursday. The playoff starts tomorrow on Friday. First round games on college campuses, and then the semifinals, the quarterfinals, semifinals, at both sites, all 6 of them in play, and then the national championship in Atlanta on January 20th, I believe. So we have a lot of college football to get to. Take a look at some of these teams, these matchups. We'll get into the NFL a little bit later on as well. But first of all, we start with Indiana at Notre Dame for the Friday night game. We battle Indiana. Obviously, Purdue not a player here, as both teams dominated Purdue, one of the worst teams in the FBS. But we're talking about the real teams now. Indiana, number 7, 11-1. That's Notre Dame, the number 7 team in the country, 11-1. Their lone loss to NIU, and the number 10 Indiana Hoosiers, 11-1. Turnaround season under Curt Cignetti, and what a wonderful turnaround that's been, and their lone loss to the Ohio State Buckeyes. Indiana, under Curt Cignetti, a bunch of transfers from, like Elijah Surratt, so many of the JMU Dukes, making making an impact here on the next level. And Indiana's just been a really dominant football team this season. They haven't played the toughest schedule, but they've really ran it up on their non-conference slate, and even their conference slate. They had no issues with just about anyone all year. And Michigan gave them trouble, and Ohio State, overmatched them in talent. But Indiana responded with a 66-0 blanking of the Boilers, and they take on in-state rivals, the Irish, the Fighting Irish have been an interesting team. Obviously you have the loss to NIU early on in the season, but other than that, Notre Dame's been a very good football team. They knocked off A&M on the road. And then after the NIU game, they bounced right back, routed Purdue, knocked off another MAC opponent, Miami, Ohio, who, funny enough, ended up beating NIU later on in the season. So sometimes it really just is a game of matchups. NIU, happened to be the better team on that day, but Notre Dame just rolled the rest of the schedule, including some very good teams in Navy and Army, who just had the Army-Navy game, Navy getting a 31-13 win. But Notre Dame, able to dominate their schedule, a lot of ACC on there. They won against USC. They beat Louisville, so they really haven't had too much of a tough time with anyone since the NIU game. They even defeated A&M, Louisville, the toughest teams on their schedule. Riley Leonard, the quarterback transferring from Duke. There's talent on the trenches here for the Fighting Irish, more than they have a good run defense, a capable offense. They're able to move the ball. Stout ground game. Indiana hasn't really seen talent on the trenches like that, other than Ohio State and Michigan. I think this one's going to be a good game. I think it could be a very good game. However, I think Indiana is probably going to race out to potentially an early lead in this football game. However, I think Notre Dame is going to be able to kind of outmatch them on the lines of scrimmage, and that's a very important aspect of this game. I think Notre Dame is going to settle in. They're going to figure out the recipe for Indiana, and similarly to Ohio State, they're going to dispatch them. But I think Indiana is going to remain in the game. They're going to fight hard, never daunted. But I think Notre Dame is going to be too much. They are a legit team this season, and they'll end up taking on Georgia in the second round. I'd like to see an Indiana upset. But I feel like Notre Dame's going to win at home, but we'll have to see. I think Notre Dame is the better team. I think Indiana could definitely compete with them, but I think Notre Dame is going to be too much there. Indiana, we saw get outmatched by the one tough team in their schedule. They struggle with Michigan. I think Notre Dame has turned a corner from the NIU game, and I think they'll be good enough to get the home win. But moving on to the Saturday slate, SMU taking on PSU on Penn State. So number 11, the 11th seed SMU Mustangs out of Dallas, Texas, new ACC member from the American, the ACC championship game loser. This has been a good football team. This has been an exciting football team. They played good football. They almost went undefeated. They also played a relatively, easier schedule, but their lone loss coming to a ranked BYU team at the time, who they passed. But other than that, knocking off their ACC slate with relative ease until, a loss to Clemson on a long field goal attempt. Kevin Jennings has been remarkable as a dual threat. At quarterback. On top of that, I mean, they have Brashard Smith, Roderick Daniels. So an exciting team down there in Texas. I think, the debate was SMU versus Alabama for the last spot. And I mean, I could see the argument on either side, but the Crimson Tide, I mean, they had 3 losses. If they were to Georgia, Texas, and Oregon or something like that, I could understand why you put them in. But 2 of their losses were to unranked teams, Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. 2 of them went 6-6, and SMU, their lone loss to a very good BYU team who ended up I believe 10-2 in the Alamo Bowl, taking on Colorado. So it just sounds interesting because I thought both of those two are Pac-12, Big 12 teams. But in any case, so that's the Alamo Bowl matchup. Colorado taking on BYU. It should be an exciting one there. But other than that, that is kind of interesting as both of them are Big 12 teams. I didn't realize they could do that. But in any case, that's the BYU team that beat SMU. Since SMU has been a very good team, the ACC overall hasn't really been that great. But Miami was in the conversation until Syracuse knocked them off. Clemson was definitely, they were able to roar back, and we'll get to their matchup later. But as good as SMU is, Kevin Jennings, with over 3,000 yards through the air, 379 on the ground. Brashard Smith, as I mentioned, Roderick Daniels. But Penn State is Penn State. I mean, they Drew Aller with Bo Prabula on the backfield. Drew Aller has really shown to himself to be a really good quarterback. Katron Allen, Nick Singleton, their defense is solid. And what impressed me the most with the Nittany Lions is the way their offense played against Oregon. They might have looked non-existent in the Ohio State game. They potentially salted away their chances for winning. They threw an interception in the end zone. They were not able to run it in. But against Oregon, it was a shootout. And although Penn State fell short, they were able to live up to it, play from behind, and they had a good a game plan for that. And SMU, although a good team, Penn State does take care of business against teams that aren't better than them, like Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan in the past. But this time, Penn State, a home crowd advantage. I mean, SMU, playing a soft schedule, and Penn State, they've even improved since their lone loss to the Ohio State Buckeyes. I mean, a gutsy punt call against Minnesota, and I think the Nittany Lions will be ready here. So give me Penn State taking on Boise State. They have a favorable bracket. Penn State, Boise, taking on SMU and Boise State. I mean, Ashton Genty, who I believe should have been the Heisman, looking to set the all-time rush record. That could be a challenge for Penn State as they push Oregon to the brink. But still, Penn State looking for hopefully a spot to the semifinals if you're a Nittany Lions fan. I think they have as favorable of a draw as anybody in the bracket. And I think Penn State should take advantage of that and knock off SMU. Probably close in the first half. I would assume Penn State would be able to put the pedal to the metal, get a 2-score win over the Mustangs. Great season there for SMU, but it's going to be a different environment, whiteout and Happy Valley. This is what Penn State's been waiting for. I mean, they've been in the conversation. They've been, good enough, but not good enough for so many years. And, now the field opens up for the Nittany Lions. And, even in the Big Ten, they were able to get the second. They were able to compete against Oregon due to Ohio State fumbling away their chances against Michigan. They were able to be the second best team in the Big Ten in some ways, and they were able to earn themselves a home game and a high seed, the fourth team in the nation, and the sixth seed overall. So I think Penn State is gonna knock them off pretty handily. Maybe not pretty handily, but 2-3 touchdowns. I would say. I don't think SMU is gonna. You know. Yeah, I don't think SMU is gonna be able to win that game. I think they'll be in it for a while, but I don't think they'll be able to hang in there. But I guess continuing to go on here, Clemson versus Texas. The other three games are all cold weather games: Indiana, Notre Dame, Penn State, SMU, and Ohio State, Tennessee. Which I'm really looking forward to that one. But Clemson taking on Texas. Clemson, the number 12 team, ACC champions, 10-3. Their losses coming to Georgia, South Carolina, and Louisville. So going against another SEC team here. Georgia was a blowout. South Carolina, Clemson could have won, but we're not able to get the victory. Texas, 11-2, also had problems with Georgia twice. Losing the SEC championship game, but other than that, they haven't lost a game. Good quarterback matchup there, and Kate Klubnik taking on Quinn Ewers. Clemson barely snuck into the playoffs. Texas, meanwhile, much better. I believe the first team out of the byes, the number 5 team. So yeah, I mean, they were, seen as much better than as Clemson. Clemson, I think, Klubnik, Phil Maffa, the running back for the Tigers, I think he's a very good player. They have a disruptive defensive line. They have a good kicker. Nolan Hauser hit one from, I believe, over 50 yards away from SMU. So I don't think Clemson's going to be an easy opponent. They've long time been the class of the ACC. Even with their 16 ranking and sneaking into the playoff, I mean, they beat the teams that they should have beaten. They might have struggled with some of the non-conference games, but or the SEC games, particularly Georgia and South Carolina. Although they were close to a win in the I would say the USC game, but the South Carolina game, but able to rally back, knock off SMU, and basically give both them and SMU the spot in the playoffs. Over Alabama, but like I said, Klubnik, good quarterback. Phil Maffa didn't really have that great of a game in the ACC championship game, but watch out for him. Bryant Wesco Jr. had 143 yards and just 8 receptions, 2 touchdowns. So really, Clemson has some deep threats. They have a good defense. I think they'll be ready for battle. Against Texas, but Texas is going to just be a bit much. I mean, they have Arch Manning, but they also have Quinn Ewers. They have a solid defense, one of the best defenses in all football, in all of college football at least. They have a prolific offense. They could score on a lot of guys. They have a really solid defense. I think they're going to be the better team. They're going to be the better team against Texas, but at the same time, I mean, I think Texas is going to be the better team against them. I think Clemson will be able to match up to some extent, but I think Texas is going to be able to get the win at home in front of the home crowd. Clemson struggle with the ACC. I mean, with the SEC in particular, but Texas, I think they're just more talented. They're they on both sides of the football. So the winner of that game gets to go to Arizona State to take on the Arizona State Sun Devils, number 4 seed in the playoff. So the winner of Penn State SMU going to Boise, the winner of Clemson Texas going to Arizona State, the winner of Notre Dame Indiana going to Georgia, and then finally we have our night game here, Tennessee versus the Ohio State Buckeyes. Number 9 Tennessee, the first team out of a home game, 10-2 with their losses coming to Arkansas and Georgia. One good team, one not, I guess. Nico Amilava, solid quarterback for the Vols. I mean, he could throw it. He could throw it, but at the same time, I mean, what a really high recruit coming out of high school. I mean, their run game, Dylan Sampson, a really good running back. They have a 9th ranked rushing offense and an elite run defense, which is going to be a matchup nightmare for Ohio State. Ohio State, their losses coming to Oregon, Michigan. They're also a 10-2 team, the number 8 team in the country. Could have been higher if they were able to just defeat Michigan, who were a significant underdog, but they decided to run the ball up the middle, not utilize their playmakers, played the game right into Michigan's hands, and on top of that, their field goal kicker missed field goals, and their quarterback threw interceptions, and had a little bit of concussion. So all of that factored in. I'm sure the turnovers, the missed field goals, but what really cost the Buckeyes, where the play calling was just horrible. So it's all about bouncing back. Will Howard leading the offense for Ohio State. He should be good on the field this time. I mean, they have talented receivers. Where the matchup gets interesting is Tennessee has the 9th ranked rush offense. Ohio State the 59th ranked rush offense. Michigan was able to slow them down on the ground. Meanwhile, run on them. So it's going to be a cold game in Columbus. Ground and pound game. A lot of people saying the weather has a factor that it should work in Ohio State's favor, although it doesn't. It's not that much colder or warmer in Tennessee, rather, and also the cold actually does favor Tennessee's ground game rather than Ohio State's aerial attack. But it's all about Ohio State utilizing their talent. They have Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate. I mean, zone 6. I mean, on the defensive side of the football, guys like Caleb Downs. Jack Sawyer. I mean, JT Tuimoloau. I mean, they also have a very elite run defense. So both sides have a really good run defense. Ohio State, their backs, they're capable, but they have weaknesses in the run game with the offensive line and the running backs. They're able to Tennessee can weigh them down over there. I think if Ohio State wins this game, it's going to be about their aerial attack going through the air. I don't think Tennessee poses as much, much more of a threat than Michigan in the secondary. I think Ohio State has the advantage if they go to that play through their talents. If Tennessee can dominate in a ground and pound affair, they get the win. A lot of Vols fans going to be making the trip. I've seen them getting the tickets. I'm really looking forward to this one. I mean, if Ryan Day doesn't win the game, he might get fired. So there's a lot for Ohio State fans to be excited about, win or loss. But the shoe is going to be scarlet. Ohio State finally gets a night game. After getting big noon for pretty much every week of the season, and 5 out of the last 6 on Fox and 1 on BTN. So they finally get to use their lights, and this home environment thing is going to be really exciting. I mean, my prediction is Tennessee is able to pull it out on the ground, but if Ohio State is back to Ohio State, we've seen them eke out a win over Penn State, a good team, knock off Indiana, another playoff team, show their dominance on both sides of the football, even when they look down. I mean, then everything came crashing down with Michigan. But if Ohio State can be Ohio State, then, I think they can win this game. Oregon is a different beast. It would be a terrific Rose Bowl game between Ohio State and Oregon. But it's just about, can Ohio State play up to their strengths? Can they be themselves? Can they not overthink it and not get nervous in a big game and avoid the Michigan trap? Or can they, can they just play up to their talent? Because I think if they do, Ohio State's a better team. If Tennessee's allowed to play the game on their terms, they're going to be a better team than Michigan at doing that, and they can get the win. I think Tennessee's going to win, but I would like to say Ohio State wins. We'll see what happens. I really don't have much of a pick. I just have a feeling the Vols will win, but I guess if the Buckeyes, play up to their talent, they can certainly win that game at home. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see. It should be a really good one at night. I see it being a close game. Like I said, if Ohio State's become a place like Ohio State, they can win. If Tennessee is able to dictate the terms of the game, they win. For some reason, I just have a gut feeling that Ohio State's going to choke it up. But who knows for sure? We'll find out in a couple of days. Another game, while we're talking about the bowl games, I did want to give my Rutgers Scarlet Knights a little bit of a preview here against Kansas State. So Rutgers coming off 7-5 season. Kansas State 8-4. Rutgers, I've seen the line between +4.5 to +7. Coming off a resurgent November, are the Scarlet Knights after a winless October and a 4-0 September. So it's been an up and down season for Rutgers with big wins over Virginia Tech, Washington, a nosedive into the ground in October where, the Scarlet Knights just fell apart. We're not able to really stop anybody. And then Harris-Semiak rebuilt the defense. Joe Harris-Semiak is now at UMass. But the defense really stepped up, knocking down passes, creating pressure, sacks. And meanwhile, on offense, guys like Dymere Miller, Ian Strong, KJ Duff. The Rutgers Scarlet Knights have a passing attack, and even in the portal, getting guys like DJ Sheffield and so many others. CJ Campbell, the running back. I mean, getting playmakers on both sides of the ball. We don't know if Kambananga is going to be playing in the game. I believe Dymere Miller is. Some other players are uncertain at the moment, but there's a lot to decide about who's going to be playing, who's not. a lot of players are iffy, especially the ones going to the NFL. But Jacoby Henderson, the cornerback coming in from Marshall, DJ Sheffield, the transfer receiver from North Texas. I think that's going to be huge. But yeah, Rutgers taking on Kansas State. Their last month of the season. I mean, like I said, after they're kind of cruising past some easy teams in the beginning of the month, knocking off a Tech, Washington 3-point wins, a couple of those. Nosediving in October, including some embarrassing losses to Wisconsin, to UCLA and USC, and then turning it around against Minnesota, Maryland, pushing Illinois to the brink. I mean, a very good Illinois team, and rebounding from that one, a dominant win over MSU. But Kansas State, the favorite in this one. I think it's similar to kind of Ohio State, Tennessee, and where it could be the ground game determines it, because Rutgers is a very ground game oriented team, especially if Kamanungai plays. Although they do have a more aerial attack this year, Kansas State same way. They're also a very ground oriented team. 8-4. They've taken care of who they should have beaten. They've lost a few games to some of their tougher opponents on their schedule, but have roughly been able to hang in there for the most part. So kind of two teams in a similar boat. Avery Johnson, I was able to watch a Kansas State game early on the season. He's a true dual threat quarterback. He can run the football. He could throw the football. He beat out Will Howard for the job. So, I mean, solid quarterback. I mean, DJ Giddens, their running back, is really good. They have speed all over the field. Their defense is also stout, good against the run. So, I mean, we got an interesting ground and pound game. A lot of people say Kansas State, probably the better team overall. So we'll have to see, how that happens. A long trip away for both teams in Arizona. You're going to Chase Field. So Rutgers has beaten the Wildcats 37-10 in the Texas Bowl 2006. So yeah, I mean, Rutgers is going into the desert to take on Kansas State. Greg Schiano 6-2 in bowl games. The 37-10 was a win over the Wildcats, the first one in the legendary 2006 season. Let's see. I mean, it's gonna be interesting. I think with Rutgers potentially having players opt out in bowl games. I think Kansas State is the better team this time, with a line of 6.5. But who knows? It can go either way. It could definitely go either way. Rutgers does take this very seriously. It depends on who plays and who doesn't. But I think Rutgers are going to be able to hang around in this game. I think but I think Rutgers is going to definitely be able to hang around in this game. They might be even able to get the win, but I think Kansas State is the better team. Avery Johnson, a very good player. DJ Giddens, a good player. Like I said, some Scarlet Knights might be sitting out, but I think Rutgers can hang in there. They could even get the win, but I would go Kansas State. Day after Christmas, December 26th to 5:30. So, should be a terrific end to the season for Rutgers. After kind of saving the season and building some momentum into the bowl game. Playing a good caliber, similar opponent. So, Rutgers could potentially win it. But if they don't, I think Kansas State will be a good opponent for them. I think Kansas State just a little bit better, but I think Kansas State, just a little bit better, but Rutgers can definitely hang in there. And I don't think they'll get as lucky with Miami opting a lot of their players out. I think Rutgers falls just a little bit short, but keeps themselves in the game. It should be a good Christmas break for Scarlet Knights fans regardless. And we'll have to see if they get the win. A bit of a softer schedule this year, next year for the Scarlet Knights. Rutgers ends up with Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa. A lot of the heavy hitters that were not on the schedule this year, they'll see next year. So we'll see if Rutgers can take advantage of it and get to their 8th win of the year, dropping KSU to 8-5 as well. But I'd say Kansas State likely wins the game. Rutgers covers. But yeah, I mean that those are my thoughts on that matchup as well. I guess just to talk about some of these other the top 4 teams in the college football playoff before we shift to some NFL. Obviously, I mean Oregon number 1, 13-0. I think they should be the favorites to win the national championship. They haven't lost a game. I mean, they looked a little iffy against Idaho and Boise State earlier, but I mean, they've only gotten better since then. I mean, knocking off a good Penn State team. I mean, I think it should be a good, terrific game if Tennessee comes, or if Ohio State comes to the Rose Bowl, meets Oregon down on the West Coast, in LA. But I think they should be the favorites. Georgia has shown some weaknesses this year. They haven't always looked like themselves. But they've still been a good team under Carson Beck, and they have a solid defense to boot. They've been the best team in the SEC. They knocked off Tech, Georgia Tech in 9 overtimes. Their lone losses coming to Ole Miss and Alabama, two of the only teams that could really beat them, I guess. But I think they'll be a good team. They'll be a tough out for anyone. Penn State versus Georgia, if we're looking ahead to the semi, should be a good one, because Penn State, probably a favorable path as any, with running into Boise if they beat SMU. Boise State under Ashton Genty, a really terrific running back. They look like a really good team. I mean, they pushed Oregon to the brink and their only loss of the season. Other than that, they've been solid against their schedule. They nearly had a mishap against Wyoming, a bad Wyoming team, but other than that, they played very well. I think Boise State is not going to be an easy feat for the Nittany Lions to knock off. I think Ashton Genty is going to keep them in that game and boost his stats, try to claim the all-time rushing record. I really would have liked him to end up as the Heisman, but alas, it wasn't to be. But I guess on top of all of that, I guess the only other team that I would have, the other bowl, Arizona State, the other team with the bye. The Big 12 has been an interesting league this year. BYU, Iowa State, Colorado has all been very good. But the Sun Devils taking the cake, under a guy named Cam Scatabo, the running back. Arizona State's been a very good team. They dominated a very good Iowa State team in the championship game. I mean, they've kind of ran through their schedule pretty well. So will they be able to beat a team like Texas in the next round? Probably not. But I mean, they play really good football, so they're definitely worthy of the final seed. I think another thought that I had was any of the 4 teams. I think everyone thought the 12 seed would automatically be the Group of 5 champion, and Boise State would get that spot, or maybe one of the other teams, and end up going on the road. I don't think anyone envisioned Boise State securing the 3, Arizona State with the 4, Clemson backing in with the 5, but that's how it played out. I don't think there's anything wrong with Boise getting a bye under the format, and yes, there are things to be tweaked, and Oregon does have a harder path with Ohio State, Tennessee winter coming. Penn State is an easier path. However, nothing's going to be perfect in the first year. I mean, this is a format we agreed on. It's taken this long to get to a 12-team playoff, so let's enjoy it for what it's worth. And, obviously, nothing's, people can learn from their mistakes and they can fix it. But right now, we have a playoff to get to. So, and if more power to Oregon if they're able to win the whole thing, going through the field. So, let's not fix what isn't broken. It's an exciting time in college football, and I'm really excited to see what goes on down there, but in the playoff. But in the meantime, we could talk about the NFL. It's been a little bit of a while since I've done this, but let's do a little 16 game recap. We'll talk about some of the big games like usual, and then we'll call it a week. Getting started here last Thursday, the Rams taking on the 49ers, getting an ugly 12-6 win. Not really a good game, just only field goals, as Joshua Carty with 4, Jake Moody with 2. LA taking a lead in their division, tied with the Seahawks, 8-6 now, after a loss to the Green Bay Packers. The Niners in last with 6-8, Cardinals 7-7. I just couldn't avoid looking at the Eagles at 12-2 and the Giants at 2-12, but that's a different story. We'll get there. Commanders edging off the Saints, 20-19. Able to stop the 2-point conversion against New Orleans, who played 3 guys at quarterback. But Washington kind of proving that they're good against bad teams and bad against good teams. Although they even lost to the Cowboys, but they play Philly again next week. They are back on a 2-game win streak. They looking to keep their playoff spot alive. and Jane Daniels looks to be back to his usual accurate self. Good to see that as always. Washington, able to hang in the race, and you know, with the 2019 win, they are 9-5 on the season. So moving on to Kansas City taking on the Browns. The Chiefs just continue to win, but this time it wasn't a close win. The Browns are terrible. Jameis Winston, 3 picks. Patrick Mahomes, 159 and 2 touchdowns. But he, had an ankle injury, so his status unknown for next week, although it looks like he's going to play. The Chiefs looking up to lock up that number 1 seed. They boast a very fraudulent 13-1 record, just barely winning against the Panthers and the Raiders and the Chargers. I mean, every week is just a different story. I mean, one week they make a field goal, another week they miss, the other team, gets a penalty and they lose the football, and it's just, another week they bank it off the post. But this week, they do play the Texans and then the Steelers on Christmas. So some interesting games for the Chiefs against some of the other AFC contenders there. Going against Houston this week. So the Bengals taking on the Titans. They get the win. The Texans knocking off the Finns. Talking about my Giants here, just a train wreck of a team. Tim Boylan at quarterback. The results do not get better. You got Malik Neighbors. You got Tyrone Tracy. You got whoever's playing quarterback. You got the fans not caring, and Lamar Jackson and Baltimore just having a day with Lamar going 21 for 25, five touchdowns, 290 yards, nearly a perfect game. Rashad Bateman, Derrick Henry standing out, and the Giants lucky to get on the board under Singletary and Malik Neighbors. But, the Giants are basically done for the season, looking for the number 1 pick. The Jets snapped their losing streak to get to 4-10. Aaron Rodgers, not playing as bad as people might think, 289 yards, 3 touchdowns. Devontae Adams, 198, 2 touchdowns. And Aaron Rodgers even with 45 on the ground. Jacksonville keeping themselves alive in a close one, but taking the loss to a similarly struggling Jets team. They're second in Florida in 2 weeks. So moving on to the next week, onto the next game, the Cowboys finding their winning ways at the wrong time. Cooper Rush able to get to 214 and 3 touchdowns, and the Cowboys losing their draft status, 6-8. The Panthers, with Bryce Young struggling with 1 touchdown, 2 picks. So Dallas getting the win in Carolina. The Bucks knocking off the Chargers, 8-6 are both teams as the Bucks kind of looking to find their refine their winning ways as the Falcons try to keep pace with them in the division. Broncos knocking off the Colts as they look to stay alive in the playoff picture. Cardinals over the Pats, the Bills over the Lions, and what could have been the game of the year. Dan Campbell with the onside kick at the wrong time. Quarterback duel, Jared Goff, 494 and 5 touchdowns, and Allen, 362 and 2 touchdowns. But yeah, Detroit unfortunately not able to keep up with the explosive Buffalo team, or they were, but they were not able to close the gap, especially after the onside kick that Buffalo nearly recovered for a touchdown. Battle of Pennsylvania goes to the Eagles, finding a way to continue to break my heart and beat good teams. They knocked off Washington, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, play Washington again this week. So we'll have to see. I mean, the Ravens missed a bunch of field goals under Justin Tucker. The Steelers, Najee Harris inexplicably fumbled the football when they had a chance to tie. I mean, the Eagles had the lead. The Steelers tried to make a comeback, but after the Najee Harris fumble, it was all Philadelphia. And, the more surprising thing is Pittsburgh punted the ball with about 10 minutes in the fourth quarter, and they never saw it. They never saw it again. So they never saw it again. The Eagles just went on ground control. Saquon with a more quiet game, the passing game this time. That's what's been a struggle in Philadelphia with the Eagles getting that one back together. Jalen Hurts, 25 for 32, 290 and 2 touchdowns. And A.J. Brown, who was seen to be not on the same page with 110 and a touchdown. So the Eagles trying to get the kinks out of the way. The playoff coming up, 3 divisional games. Washington going to be the toughest one before the Cowboys and the Giants come in and visit them to end the season. Obviously not looking forward to that one, but is what it is with the Giants. It'd be obviously we want them to lose, so it's perfectly fine. The Packers taking on the Seattle Seahawks, a 30-13 win for Green Bay, trying to keep pace in the loaded NFC North and hold on to a playoff spot, while Seattle looking to keep pace at the top of the division. This one was all Packers. By the time the Seahawks even got anything going, it was too late. And the Vikings knocking off the Bears, 12-2 is Minnesota, tied atop the NFC North with the Detroit Lions. So you're coming off a loss, but that's a very loaded division. 12-2 Lions, 12-2 Vikings, 10-4 Packers, and then you got the Bears, who are 4-10 after a pretty decent start to the season. Up inconsistent, but they're on 8-game losing skid. And finally, to end this one off, the Falcons taking on the Vegas Raiders, also looking for that number 1 pick. Vegas put up a fight. Kirk Cousins has been miserable, so Michael Penix Jr. will be making the start for for Atlanta in New York for the first time. And the Raiders trying to hold on to that spot. I believe they would be able to get the 1 pick if both teams continue to lose, as they would have the harder strength or easier strength of schedule, unfortunately. NFL draft, looking good for the Giants and the Raiders. The way I see it is either way, the Giants will either get Ward or Shadur. We'll have to see. I mean, the Raiders right now with the 1, the Giants with the 2. The Raiders do have a chance for a big a win here against Jacksonville, which Giants fans I know will be rooting for that as they take on Atlanta. But we'll have to see. That's full of surprises. I think either way, Shadur Sanders or Cam Ward would be a good fit. So that looking ahead to the week 17, I mean the Saturday doubleheader is going to be, or week 16, the Broncos Chargers is tonight. At 8:15. Some of the games to look forward to: Texans Chiefs, especially Mahomes. Is to go. Let's see. Hollywood Brown might be playing for his first game of the season, and alongside Xavier Worthy. I mean, the Chiefs kind of finding who to put in at the right time. At receiver, Pacheco's healthy. The defense is all kinds of good, and they've been getting double magic like no other. Looks like Patrick Mahomes is gonna be playing, I believe, in the game. So he's expected to play, which is good news for the Chiefs against Houston, who's also a good team, a division winner in their own right. So the other big game, Steelers Ravens, likely to decide the AFC North. Both teams in the AFC North, with the Steelers ahead by 1 game. If the Steelers can get a 2-game lead in the season sweep, then they'd be in really good position after edging out Baltimore last month. But and then in the AFC South, the Texans able to get to 9-5 and lead their division. But those are probably the 2 biggest games of the week on Saturday. And other than that, I mean, Eagles Commanders should be a really good one on Sunday. Eagles looking to lock up the division there. Commanders looking to make the playoffs there. Eagles now on a 10-game winning streak. So that one's interesting. Jaguars Raiders, a big watch for Giants fans. Giants Falcons obviously as well. And Bucks Cowboys in the primetime spot. Saints Packers getting the Monday night game. And then Christmas, Chiefs Steelers, Ravens Texans are shuffling around these teams. Did want to analyze the playoff picture since it's been a few weeks since I've done that. AFC East, Buffalo looks like they've all but locked it up at an 11-3 record. Lost a shootout to the Rams, a little bit surprising, but bounced back with another shootout win over the Lions. They're going to be a good team, the only team to beat the Chiefs this year in the regular season, maybe even do it again. The Chiefs back on their winning ways. Patrick Mahomes, as I mentioned, will be playing, in this game against Houston. So they look to lock up the number 1 seed. I believe they can, and with a couple more wins there. Steelers and Ravens with a big decider in the North. Both teams should make the playoffs. The Texans in the South. The wild card's looking to be the loser of Steelers Ravens. Should get a wild card spot. The Broncos and Chargers positioning themselves in good position with winning records as well. Denver a sneaky 9-5 under Bo Nix, and after two more wins. I mean, the Broncos have just been on a great win streak. Their last loss to the Chiefs. But since then the 4-3 wins for Denver. Chargers, although they've lost a couple before that, they've been they've lost to the best teams they played, but they look to also be in the race this year. It looks like the winning record teams are going to be the ones who make the playoffs. The bracket almost looks perfect because the 4 division winners will get in. Baltimore likely gets in, and then the Broncos and Chargers likely get in as well. So it looks like everything is meant to shake out the way it is. In the NFC, the Eagles, Vikings, and Lions all at 12-2, battling for that number 1 seed. We'll have to see who ends up getting that one. It could be Philly with the Vikings taking on the Lions in the division in the finale game there. So, similarly, the Eagles looking for a division crown. The NFC West, probably the least successful division, but one of the teams will get a spot. NFC South might actually be the least successful division with the Bucks, and then the Lions, Vikings, Packers likely to all get in with their records and take 2 of the wild card spots along with the division winner. So it'll likely be the Bucks, the Lions, Vikings, Packers, whoever wins NFC West, and the Eagles in it, along with the Washington Commanders at the wild card spot. So that's a little playoff picture update for you. But yeah, other than that, I mean, this has been, it's been a terrific episode. It's great to to be back and talking NFL. I guess another thing I could do is look at these playoff matchups here and just a little bit of analysis. So like I mentioned, the Chiefs in the first seed, the Bills right now at 2, Steelers 3, Texans 4, the Ravens at 5, likely to be the top wild card. Maybe not. The Broncos in 6, Chargers at 7, as I mentioned. The Lions in the first seed in the NFC, followed by the Philadelphia Eagles. The Vikings right now all tied. All 3 teams are tied up. I guess it'll be between whoever gets the top record, and that will be number 1. The second team in the North will be 5, and then the other one will be 2. The Bucks, the Rams, kind of the fraudulent 3 and 4. The Packers, with somehow like right now with the 6th seed at 10-4 behind the Vikings, and the Commanders at 9-5, and Seattle at 8-6. So it looks like the playoffs are just about shaped really perfectly this year. It looks like the teams that are going to make it are going to be good, and the ones who aren't. We'll obviously get into more of this later, but in the meantime, the college football playoff taking top priority here. Something that we've never had before, 12-team playoffs. So really looking forward to that. But always great to talk about NFL and CFB. It's great to be back doing an episode. Try to keep the series going weekly, especially to analyze these playoff games going forward and as the NFL playoff picture gets solidified. But in the meantime, this has been another episode of SportsVibe. I'm your host, Arnav Sarkar. Enjoy the first round of the playoffs, and as always, we'll see you next time.